it's what comes out of these budgets is a real visibility, or what should is a lot of visibility around how our departments operate, and you hope to find a marriage and a match between what we're spending our money on and what the needs of the community are. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of Tuesdays with Tiffany. We're still doing our soft launch. This is really meant to be a forum which allows me to engage with members of the community, learn more about issues that are important to them, and let people learn a little bit about me. The goal is ultimately to have this be interactive, where people just ask me questions on the fly, like a town hall or an interview, and I just answer, the best that I can. Right now, as we're going through the soft launch, it's really, I'm going to be fed some questions from my counterpart, Al Benninghoff, who's a longtime Hoboken campaign supporter, who is our campaign manager, who's managing the Team Fisher campaign. Couldn't be more excited. And today, I think the majority of what we're going to talk about is what is front and center on everyone's mind right now, which is our budget, our proposed tax increase, and just what we're going to do about it. It's a pretty challenging year, and as I always do, I drill down in the details. So with that, we will let's go.
Get started. Yeah, pleasure for me to be here. Thanks, Stephanie. Before we get started with the budget talk, though, did you want to give everybody an update about what's happening with the campaign? Lots of events coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of excitement. Last week, if I don't know if you heard or not, but my very good friend and an amazing community advocate, Liz Urtecho, announced that she is running for an at-large city council seat. She's going to be running on Team Tiffany, and really just the perfect partner for me, and a great leader for our community on very similar issues. We're very focused on good governance, transparency, accountability, quality of life issues, just always putting residents first. And, Liz has lived in Hoboken for over 30 years, raised four of her kids here. One is still in high school. Like, she is all about, what it means to be a family growing up in Hoboken, and just really thrilled to have her. She is having her fundraiser, which is kind of, we're all together, but her fundraiser is June 2nd, I believe, at 6:30 at 10th and Willow. I hope everyone can join, and we'll see more an expansion of Team Fisher over the coming weeks. And then additionally, this Friday, I'm basically doing another new program called Table Talk. And the idea for this is I'm just going to walk around the city with a table and meet people on corners. And I'm going to take the opportunity to launch this right in my backyard. Again, kind of soft launching, but it is going to be this Friday from 6 to 7:30, and it's going to be in the Bloomfield Street extension, just north of 15th Street, on your way to the waterfront. And I'm going to have two very special guests, which are two of the Democratic Assembly candidates. One is a household name to everyone in Hoboken. That's Jenny Pooh. She's incredible. She is the Hoboken librarian. She is, head of her PTA in Jersey City. She's been a librarian, I believe, at Jersey City University. She just knows so many issues, and she's been a great advocate for our community. And I'm so excited for her in her race for to be on the state assembly and to represent us. And the second person is Crystal Fonseca. And Crystal Fonseca is, she's exactly what we want our representatives to be: someone who's hardworking, who knows the issues, who lives the issues. Our government is really mostly there for people that are underrepresented, and she is just coming out full force saying, I want to make sure that those that are less represented have a big seat at the table, and I am all for that. She's a 20-year veteran of working for the city of Jersey City, and knows a lot of just the tabletop and everyday issues that impact all of us. So we're just going to be out kind of mingling. Feel free to come meet them, get to know them better. Come meet me. We're just going to be hanging out, talking to neighbors as they walk their dogs, walk by, walk to the parking garage to get out of town for the weekend. We're just going to be talking with everyone. So come by and see us.
Excited to roll out these table talk series because I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for people of Hoboken to get to meet you and talk to you one on one.
Yep, exactly.
Great. So top of mind for a lot of people, and I know it's with today's hearing as well, is the budget. And you were talking to me earlier about the business administrator who's on their way out, but had mentioned that we're in a bit of a pickle. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so our prior business administrator, Jason Freeman, left on May 7th, and it was the night that they introduced the budget. And he's just going on to a different opportunity. I wish him well. But when he gave the presentation, he was really um, generally just critical of all of the steps of the city council, the administration that we've taken over the last, several years, and is forecasting just significant budget gaps, in the future. And, you know, I've spent some time with our replacement, our new interim business administrator, Caleb Stratton. I'm going to spend more time with them in the coming days. I've gone through, as I do every year, I go through the budget in detail. I also I also put side by side every single budget every single year so we can see the trends and patterns and how line items, have changed. And I'm hopeful that it's not as difficult. I don't think it's as difficult as they say it's going to be the next couple of years. But we do have, we have some real issues that the city is facing, and the main drivers to our tax increases, generally fall into what I would say two main categories. The first category is, we've made a lot of promises and made a lot of big announcemements and made big commitments to parks and infrastructure investments that are huge. And at the time, we're all on the city council, the mayor is trying to get his headlines, we're all generally in situations where our choice is to either support a headline or not support a headline. And we support the headlines. And so we've, between the Southwest Park being built, in the beginning of this mayor's term and open, once it's open and operating, we have increased debt service costs. We have the Northwest Resilient City Park. That is a combination of a park and a massive, massive resiliency infrastructure that combined cost almost $100 million. We're paying for that now. We have, a that we're not yet paying for. We have the repairs of the waterfront between Sinatra Park and the skate park. That's another 40 million that we're going to start, or 35 million that we're going to start paying for in the coming years. Another big thing, we acquired the current DPW site, and what I would say a great headline for Hoboken, the Monarch deal, where we were able to get a piece of the waterfront in a big lot on the west side of Hoboken in exchange for our DPW site. But embedded in that, we actually had to find a new DPW garage, and that cost us almost $90 million. So we're now starting to pay debt service on all of that, and those costs are being borne by taxpayers, and they will be borne by taxpayers over the coming years. We still have some other commitments that are unfunded at this point that we just haven't incurred yet, which is the Maritime Park Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 is beginning now. We have the widening of Sinatra. That will be beautiful when it's done, but that will probably cost another 10 or 15 million dollars. We have the expansion of the Southwest Park that is currently underway that should open this fall. Again, as soon as is open, we start paying debt service on that. And then we just have additional maintenance of all these parks that we've never really forecasted before. Really, when you look back, the costs are real. And there just was never, the administration's approach was to just not be transparent, right? They wanted the headline wins, they wanted the campaign wins. I've said, people have heard me say this before, that my biggest complaint about this administration is they run the city like a campaign, and that has a lot of tentacles to it. But this is exactly where we're feeling it. When you're running and all you want is a short-term headline, and you want to say, "Oh my God, I want this amazing, amazing park," and everyone wants that same amazing park. If you're not being given, the budget, you're not even following the budget. We end up in the situation that we're in right now. So it's a real issue. And I'll touch on some other things relating to that. The obvious question is, why didn't I stop it? Well, at the time, you know what? It it was, the mayor had 4 votes, and generally marketed these projects in a way that made it so that the community wanted them. And so your choice at the time was, do you support a project even if it's flawed, or do you individually stop it when the project already has the votes and it already had the votes? So, we ended up supporting a lot of these projects that are great for Hoboken. No one's questioning, how amazing the Northwest Resiliency Park is. No one's questioning the expansion of the Southwest Park or what Maritime Park is going to be. Um, it's just now we're paying for it, and what we really need to do is figure out a way to generate more revenues, which we've done, and we're seeing come through. We have additional parking revenues. Um, we have additional facility fee revenues. We've been able to generate additional revenues that help offset some of these costs, and we're seeing that go through the budget as well, which is a positive. The second kind of main driver is everything relating to our public safety contracts and our public safety. You know, this is an issue that's really important to Hoboken residents, and it comes at a cost. Back in 2020 and 2021, the administration put forward some very rich public safety contracts. And at the time, there was no transparency, on that at all. We asked basic questions, but we weren't given any like tools to forecast what the impact would be. And what we saw is we saw dramatic increases in 2022, the year after Mayor Bala ran for reelection, convenient. And embedded in these are two things. One is because our public safety were off contract for a few years, they had not received any increases. There was back pay relating to those years, just with some cost of living increases that most people get and we support. But additionally, they put some step increases in, and that really just elevates the salaries for at every level and every year of service. And those are those are probably the ones that have the bigger impact. And just like the contract that the city council voted in favor of back in March of this year, they're really heavily weighted to longer serving. The increases are heavily weighted to the longer serving members of our public safety teams, and so they're the ones that are already being paid a lot or getting paid a lot more. And as time rolls, their increases are felt dramatically. And then the other part of it that is not quite as obvious is, the reason why they look for these contracts to be kind of heavy weighted towards the end is so that when they retire, they have a very big pension. And I get it. I get that that's what they want. So what happens then is we now have pension costs that are going up exponentially as well. So we just have a lot of public safety costs, and it's something that we just need to take a very close look at. As we think about the public safety needs in our community, we just want to make sure that we're paying fairly, that we're paying in a way that keeps stability within public safety in our community, but also that we're just thinking through what the right like structure is. Are they meeting the needs of the community? And I think we have some of the hardest working and amazing public safety professionals, but I think that we have an opportunity to sit down and say, all right, how do we maybe realign some of what they're doing with the community policing needs that our city really is looking for. So anyway, it's what comes out of these budgets is a real visibility, or what should is a lot of visibility around how our departments operate, and you hope to find a marriage and a match between what we're spending our money on and what the needs of the community are. And right now we're doing that. It's just that we aren't seeing revenue offsets to offset some of these really big increases, and therefore taxpayers are bearing the majority of the burden of it.
Right. I remember you mentioned that at least during the COVID times, there was a little bit of a budget help
Yeah,
coming
that's I.
through.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. So that's the other thing that happened. Going back and like looking through every single year, we got a ton of COVID money um, in the l- 2020 early. The bulk of it was 2021, actually 2020 and 2021, and we still get it. We still have some that weans off. And there's two types. There's really like two types of COVID money. There's the COVID money that you were given that you were paying for things that are not part of your annual budget. So, they give you $10 and you're going to go and you're going to buy COVID tests for $10. So it comes into the budget as revenue, goes out as an expense, perfectly matched, and doesn't impact our budget at all. The other type of money is when we bring it in and we are offsetting real costs within our budget. And that is what we did in around 2022, where we had this really, really big increase in public safety costs that were just based on these new contracts that the mayor negotiated and the city council had approved. But what they did is they took some of that COVID money and they used it as like a recurring source of revenue to offset those big increases that year. But unfortunately, the next year that money went away. So now it just creates a budget cap the next year. So we saw some big tax increases that happened at the time. And I do think it's worth, as I went through and kind of really isolated and identified all of the COVID dollars, there's literally no transparency or visibility on exactly what the COVID dollars were spent on. And I think there's a whole exercise that needs to happen to really understand where that, $25 million went, to Hoboken. So anyway, that's a accumulating impact within our budget. And you say, well, what does 2022 have to do with today, right? Well, as we're trying to, take these crazy expense increases year over year and not burden taxpayers, we're looking for ways within the budget to cut costs as well as to take, to borrow revenues or to use revenues. So we've done that. And I think the business administrators concerned that we're going to deplete our surplus and not be able to have this like recurring source of revenue every year to offset some of our costs. And I'm going to question that. I spent a lot of time like looking at this number, and I like the doomsday scenario that the administration is forecasting is there. I think they're being conservative, but there's a lot of questions around that. I think that, going into this final budget review, I do think there may be some wiggle room this year to bring that rate down a little bit. And then going in next year, it doesn't feel as doomsday to me as the administration is pointing out. So,
I know in any case that people of Hoboken are in good hands with your financial background and ability to read every page of all of the documents coming through,
yeah.
which has been great. And I'm sure that expertise and that knowledge is going to come through in the budget hearing that's going on tonight, which involves the public safety bit. But it also, in addition to discussing public safety, I know the health is part of that. And you had mentioned
Mhm.
that there was something. Rats in Hoboken have been an issue for a while, and so I'm sure a lot of people are curious, like where does that come in?
Sure. So when they reorganized the city a couple years ago, they put the health department underneath public safety and made it kind of a public health and safety department. It's run by Chief Ranty, who has actually done a pretty good job of kind of putting some organization and direction on all of the areas that fall under it. And um, so the health department, we've seen an expansion of a necessary expansion of, right? Like for several years, we've really struggled with rats in a way in Hoboken since COVID that we didn't really see before, and we don't know exactly for sure, what caused it. I've spoken with a number of experts and consultants, and about like why did this suddenly happen, and I think it at its core is a combination of two things. One is we have food sources that we didn't have before. We have a lot more uh, outside dining than we used to have, and I think that's a huge product of COVID. I think even post COVID, I think people just generally feel better, eating outside in fresh air than they do eating inside. Not everyone. And then the other is we didn't disrupt the ground for several years. We weren't really doing any type of construction or anything. And then suddenly at the end of COVID, all the development started again. And suddenly these big, huge developments were just ripping up the ground. And when you rip up the ground, all the burrows in the ground get disrupted and the rats go looking for, another home. So, it's a perfect and worst alignment of stars. So what we've seen in the health department in the last 2 years, we hired an amazing woman who's I think her title is Associate Director of Health. And she is her name is Berlin Vilcon, and she's just been great. She's really kind of she came from Newark, the city of Newark, and she's taken the rat issue head on. She has, we've had an issue in the second ward uh, that really we've struggled with to get our arms around the food source side of the equation. And she has just been a relentless advocate and partner, and as well as Nora Di Benedetto, who's our constituent services, really just trying to work with the property owners in that area to make a change. And we've done that. We made a lot of improvements during a time when the rats aren't here, but now that it's spring, I'm not smiling like I'm happy about it. I'm smiling like, oh my God, we're getting more rat sightings again. So having a fully staffed health department, given that it's really been a public health issue, and it was an issue that the city of Hoboken got behind and they didn't get in front of it. So now we have more of a crisis. I'm hoping that it won't be as bad as it's been in the past, but having a fully staffed health department, and that's one of the things that, we'll talk about tonight, is really critical to make sure that we have all the resources to be on top of addressing this key public health issue.
Yeah, that and I'm glad you're addressing, but that and the water. Speaking of disrupting the ground, the water main breaks in Hoboken have been a big issue, especially recently. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to recently, over the last couple of years, I know that's going to be part of the topic of discussion tonight as well, right?
Yep. So the other department that is presenting tonight is the climate action and innovation. And the way I would describe this is like all of the resiliency projects, but it's also all of like it's really just all of the big projects in Hoboken, whether they're like the big infrastructure projects, whether they're resiliency or whether they're like an IT overhaul, right? It really is about how can we make, um, innovative, not innovative in a waste money, innovative in a let's, make upgrades that will allow the city to be more efficient, more energy efficient, more operationally efficient. And they go through that committee that I chair, and it's been great. So, I think some of the things that we'll talk about tonight, they don't have a really big team. The engineers sit within this department, I still believe, but it's going to be really important to talk about some of these big projects that are going to be, what is the timing, what are the resources needed, over the next couple of years. We think about Rebuild by Design, which is the city's biggest infrastructure project. At some point, that's going to transition from a construction site to a management site, but a managed site. They just installed a new pump in the Northwest Resilient City Park. We've talked about installing, another pump so we can continue to see improvements on addressing and mitigating the flooding risks in the back of Hoboken. So I think and we also just have, you know, across the city, like people need to remember that Rebuild by Design is like a four-part process. Not only is it the big huge barrier structure that's finally being built now after 10 years, but it's also all of the investment in our sewers, all the drainage, all of the adding resiliency features to our parks. For example, Southwest Park, when we did the expansion, we were able to get better grant money from the state if we made even more, like it expanded our resiliency infrastructure underneath that park. And these are just good for Hoboken. A lot of people in Hoboken that live here now don't know what it was like 10 years ago before we had all of this, resiliency infrastructure. I mean, it is when I've lived on 15th Street for 25 years. And I remember that whenever we had a rainstorm, and they weren't as bad as they are now, the corner of 15th and Park would be underwater, like a foot of water for like 8 hours. It would just be completely flooded. You couldn't drive your car through it. And now maybe it floods 3 or 4 inches and maybe it lasts a half an hour at the most. And so if you've only moved in the last couple of years, maybe you're still frustrated that it's, we still get some flooding, but the reality is it's so much better because of all of the investments that we've made. And I will say one just other thing, kind of as it relates to the prior discussion on the budget. The city has done a really great job at sourcing um, a variety of funding sources for these big infrastructure projects. We get grants, they apply for every grant under the sun, so it's not directly paid by Hoboken taxpayers. They also use the state of New Jersey's what they call the I-Bank, which is like the infrastructure bank. And the I-Bank gives really, really low interest rates, and then it forgives up to, I want to say 18 to 20% of the principal amount. So you're basically getting 20% of your budget costs for free, and so almost as grant money. And they're really efficient sources. Like we if we're going to have to make big investments in our infrastructure, I don't know that we would be able to finance them more efficiently than we really have. So that's been a huge positive.
I was saying we were talking just a little bit about the flooding and rebuild by design, and I bring it back up because I want to make sure that you take ample credit for your role in that. I know you were a big proponent.
Yeah, so I have way back when I was not on the city council, and unbeknownst to me, people were trying to get me involved in things so I could be a great candidate 2 years in advance. Who knew? Um, but I was the board president at the Hudson Tea building, and we had a great relationship with Mayor Zimmer at the time, who's completely focused on protecting Hoboken, given what we experienced after Superstorm Sandy. So once the city got their won the 230 million from the FEMA grant in the contest. They applied. We won 230 million, the biggest single award given. They put together a community advocate group for that project, and she asked if I would be a part of it. And primarily because on the north end, the structure weaves through the second ward, right? And they nothing had been decided yet about where the structure was going to be built, but having some representation of the neighbors, in that area at the time. And I was like, yeah, I am all in for this. I love the innovation of it. I was here for Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy on that day. We watched the water rise around 15th Street. We watched it flood and move all the cars parked on 15th Street. Our lobby was flooded. Our basement was flooded. And then we watched it go down, right? It went up with the tide and then it went down. And we saw that happen. And none of us knew at the time that when the water went up, it went over the hump on 15th Street. And then it just sat in the back of Hoboken, for days and did the devastating damage that it did. So we didn't know that until started learning about it the next day. And so, we lived through it, and you saw how devastating it was to our neighbors. And so I was honored that she asked me to be part of what was going to be an incredible project for Hoboken. And really, I've been like the key council person on it ever since. And again, primarily because it's such an important project to Hoboken, and it was also one that was going to impact, through the second ward. Notably, which most people don't know, is the majority of the second ward is on the wet side of the structure, so we actually don't get the protection from it. So, notwithstanding that I have been the biggest face and the biggest city council, advocate for it, and I know all the details. I know the DEP, I know the engineers, I know the contractors. I know every inch of this project. It really is a project that benefits almost everyone else in Hoboken, but not Second Ward residents.
Yeah. Imagine having a mayor who knows all of these development projects backward and forward. What a great thing.
I I do, and I would say, like when I ran for office in 2013 or 2023, I said to people, like, if there's no other reason to elect me, you need to elect me because I know rebuild by design. The person I was running against didn't have the same command of it. And this is a project that is just, it is massive in its scale. It is disruptive in its massiveness. And it's just really important to have someone that knows the project inside and out, knows the neighborhood, and importantly, no matter what, doesn't put the project first, puts the residents first, and makes sure the project gets done with the residents in mind. And that last piece is something that has been missing in this project for, not missing completely, but really not, it hasn't been done as well as it could have been in the last couple of years as this project has been constructed.
Been missing from Hoboken leadership, let's say that.
It has. It has. It's
Well,
missing. You know what? It's just the project is missing Hoboken leadership. There's some very great, hardworking, knowledgeable, well-intended people working on the project, but that person that sits at the top and just pounds the table and says that doesn't work for Hoboken. We can't. Mayor Zimmer was that person. Mayor Bala has not been that person.
well, unfortunately,
But I will
that's
be.
all. But you will be exactly.
I will be. I will be. I
Unfortunately, that's about
am. I'm stepping in. I've stepped into that role every step of the way, and I will continue with that role as mayor.
excellent. Well, that'll be good for the people of Hoboken. But that's about
It
all the
will
time
be.
we have for Tuesdays with
Okay.
Tiffany today.
All
Tiffany,
right.
where can people read more about you and your policies and ideas and the future of Hoboken?
And sign up. Sure. So, two different places. I have a new campaign, not new, but it's been out there. My campaign website is tiffanyforhoboken.com, and that's TIFFANIE. I think my name is somewhere around here, for Hoboken.com. We have two policy pieces up. We have our curbing reckless e-bike riding, and we also have just a better toolbox for sidewalk and street safety in Hoboken. We will be adding more platform pieces to that, and you can also just learn more about me as a person, as a what I'm known for, which is my what I call my content-rich newsletters. You can go to Tiffany at tiffanyhoboken.com and just fill in 4 little boxes and automatically get the next one. So listen, at the core of who I am, I'm a communicator and I'm transparent. And it's really important to me. A successful leadership, I think, is based on communication, successful communication, and transparency. And that's just what I'm all about. And I will, if I have to, I'm comfortable giving, difficult delivering difficult news if you have to, but you can always rely on me to just be direct and transparent on every issue. And I welcome debate. I welcome feedback from people that may have a different view, because I go with what my informed views are until I get more information, and then maybe they change. Right. But we do the best we can. And I will tell you, I always have residents in mind on every single thing that I do. So thanks for dialing in today. Thanks for Al for being a great moderator, and looking forward to having this be a little bit more interactive, like I said, like an interview in the weeks to come. So thanks, everyone.